All right, good morning, everybody. It is just shy of 9 o'clock, but we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. uh, Since we do have quorum,
Yes,
we have one more person joining us, I believe. Let's stand by. Yes, Scott is joining us, Veronica. So noting Scott's presence, we do have quorum. I do not see any public here on site. How about you, Veronica? Is there anybody online?
we have Dean and Noah and Ashley technically. And you have
Okay.
Cameron, and is that Michael?
McKay's here.
No, I can see you, McKay.
Okay.
Okay, well, if there's any public input at all at this point. Okay, hearing none, I would like to just announce before we get into the meat of our agenda that this meeting will be Peter Maloof's last as representing Rowe. So thank you very much, sir. We really greatly appreciate your time and efforts that you've spent with the committee. And his recommended replacement is sitting beside him, Michael McGinty. He is going through the process right now with council to get officially appointed to DPAC, but we welcome Mr. McGinty to the show as well. Peter, anything you'd like to say? Is it up top?
I pushed it. Experience meeting you folks and working with you. And I'm grateful for the opportunity and wish you all well in this mission and your other missions. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. Again, like I said last meeting with Terry leaving, you've been here for a while, so we greatly appreciate your years of service with us. And stop by the college anytime and say hello. Moving on, approval of minutes from last meeting. If you guys have had a chance to review, if there are any corrections or additions, please speak now. If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Peter. Can I have a second?
Second.
Christina seconded. And all in favor? Right, we will move right along then to Mr. Inman. RFP update.
Thank you, Lynn. Wow, that came in kind of hot. Sorry. Good morning, everybody. Always a pleasure to speak with the committee. RFP update. Last meeting, I know that you were aware that Pivot is our future contractor. First points of interest are they go live for the city of Wilmington July 1st. I wrote down here on my notes that that is July 4th weekend, which is not probably the most optimal time to get your operation off the ground, but they are up to the challenge. Yesterday, the Pivot team started in-person discussions with the Reese staff. This was a meet and greet, just trying to get a feel for what their roles are, what their possible future roles would be with Pivot. They are supposed to talk with me and Chance here shortly, and the proposed announcement of positions is the first week of June. They want to get the ball rolling with who they think they want to move forward with. My next plan of action with the Pivot team is I want to get them familiarized with all of the city of Wilmington partners. I know Lynn already knows most of them anyway. Lynn is familiar with Corinne and Tina and that crowd. I wanted to get them with Christina, have them meet her. And then I want to get them familiar with Kayla Hillman, who is our event specialist That's my next couple of weeks. Once they get their feet wet with positions offered. And then, so I have down here Pivot. Pivot is excited to be here. I think that's an understatement. I think the better word is ecstatic. They have really cool plans that I like. And as we are all aware, they are familiar with the coastal communities. They're already established down here in Carolina Beach, Wrightsville Beach, et cetera. So they are excited to get the ball rolling down here July 1st. That is the RFP update, Lynn.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, concerns, comments about that? Yes, Peter.
Some will.
I could not hear
Not,
Peter.
not the whole, not the whole crowd. Some who they want to move forward with will make the transition over to Pivot.
So Peter, right now, they've kind of opened the doors to interviewing anyone and everyone from the current contractor staff. They'll still have to go through the full hiring, application, HR process with the new vendor. So there'll be background checks and, you know, all that stuff. So if there's an interest there and they interview and, you know, they're qualified for the job, most likely they would come on board. But I don't know what the turnout was yesterday. I think it's kind of a mixed bag of those that are interested and some that, you know, might be moving on to different roles.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else?
You'd mentioned some things that ideas that they had that you were excited about. And can you share any of that information at this point?
The first answer that comes to my mind is that firm is a big text to park firm. And I can foresee them doing text to park in our surface lots, Second Street deck lot and Hannah Block lot. We've got some issues with the Calais machine, and I just think that possibly one of their opening salvos would be the text to park coming to the surface lots.
All right, hearing nothing else, if you want to go ahead and move on to 300 South Front.
300 South Front. I'm not sure if Mr. Kemp is listening, but I think he's going to be happy with the update. Just to give you a little bit of background on this survey. This survey started in August of 2022. And initially, they did not meet the criteria to move forward. They recently just got done with a new survey count that went from April 30th to May 6th. I believe that they have met the threshold to move forward with getting expansion of the RPP program. What I mean by that is they initially wanted to get 1 hour except by permit, meaning that you only could park there for 1 hour if you weren't allowed to park on the street. The next phase to this is following up with the neighbors. I've got to go old school snail mail and send them a ballot and make sure, sorry, let me start over. I need to make sure half of them are in town too. I know people get missing during the summer. But there is a ballot that they get, they submit it back, saying that they want to move forward with the expansion program to their street. And then tentatively, I would like to get it on the DPAC docket for August to discuss. That's it for the South Front survey update.
Chance?
To add some minor details here. Second survey, instead of choosing a more modified program last fall, they wanted to hold it, resurvey because they felt the numbers would pass. We haven't fully looked at the numbers, but they're pretty much going to pass the 25% occupied by outside vehicles, 70% occupied at all times during a pretty hefty survey. It's probably the widest range, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. survey we've done since day one. So they're going to meet that criteria most likely, but one thing they are looking at is there's some heavy speeding traffic concerns along South Front Street daily. A lot of these houses on this block do have driveways, but residents are kind of fearful of utilizing these driveways because the back in, back out with, heavy traffic volume, with not all that traffic volume going the legal speed limit at times. That's kind of caused them to look at whether they want to stick with the 1 hour restriction or potentially go to a modified permit only, similar to 200 South Second Street. With the main reasoning really pointing to the volume of traffic and speeding. And they're thinking the less cars parked on their block, the easier it is for them to safely come and go from their residence. So we kind of have a lead liaison down the block who's talking amongst his neighbors on kind of those two options right now. So just want to add that to the discussion as we move forward. So we could come back and potentially ask for another permit only type block, which is kind of unexpected. I really thought the 200 South Second Street block was pretty unique in terms of what they were requesting and the why. But I think this block is unique as well with the traffic volume that they're faced with in a technical residential district. So unique in its own way. So.
How are we looking with, I know it's been a while, but you presented kind of an overlay map several months or longer ago with the blocks. So we knew what adjacent blocks were doing, whether they were permitting, whether they were doing whatever. How are we looking overall with remaining consistent in the residential area?
So currently, the initial request, they wanted Front Street to mirror Ann Street. Ann Street has the 200 block of Ann has the 1 hour except by permit 9 a.m. to 5:30, and then by permit only 5:30 to 3 a.m. I do suspect that that crowd would like to go permit only on that street, though.
Yeah, we were for consistent
Yeah,
purpose consistently since we had the five new blocks. They had to revise it after the pilot a couple of years back. We were kind of pushing for that Front Street block to mirror Ann Street. It's adjacent. Their corners intersect. And that's how we surveyed it because they just have the nighttime only restrictions right now. So we surveyed it similar to the neighboring blocks just to continue with the new consistency, so to speak.
Right.
And that was the route moving forward. Just so as you went through there, if new blocks came on, this is kind of what we were sort of pushing. The permit only thing came about literally probably 2 weeks ago. So it's a new request. So we haven't really had time to dissect it.
understood.
Nor do we know if the residents fully want it yet either. So I will say further south, Castle Street, I think there's going to potentially be some new challenges coming forward. There's a new restaurant opening up at the corner of Castle and 3rd Street, soon to be a pretty popular, vibrant establishment when they do open. So I think we'll we'll potentially see some more growth of the program, so to speak, on the south end as we progress forward.
Thank you. Any other questions, concerns about this particular topic? Okay, moving along, sir, to city and parking updates.
Thank you again, Lynn. The first update I want to share with the committee is the Second Street deck modernization update. I don't know if anybody in here has been in there. It looks great. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or anything, but if you walk in there, the lighting is brighter, it feels safer, and it looks better. The LED lighting upgrade is complete in that deck. The west stairwell just got completed maybe a month ago. And I don't know if you've been in there, but there's a little bit of an awning kind of on the ground by the stairwell at the bottom that we want to get painted, but we have watch your step signs in place to help assist clients walking out of the stairwell. The east stairwell, that's the one near the elevator, is almost done. There was a setback that's failing me right now, but that will be completed here shortly, and we will get a finish date to the committee. And then the last piece to the Second Street deck update is that we're going to get the elevator modernization plan going. I'm running point on that. I've got to get my ducks in a row and get a scope of services document to purchasing and get that out for a bid. And just being candid, I'm always getting stories about people not being thrilled about riding the elevator, and I want to make that better. So I'm working on that. I put a couple of weeks up here on the PowerPoint, but that's a little bit optimistic, but that is forthcoming. That is the Second Street deck update. Any questions on that? Okay. Second update I have for you is there is a Market Street deck survey that is going on with the evaluating of the joust joints. We have had discussions with engineers, and the visual survey of that deck is completed. There's planning in place by early June, and I will update the committee on the next phases of that survey.
Just to add some meat to Jeff's notes here. We've got a third-party engineer, E.B. Pancook, Stature Engineering. City's worked with him for many, many years. This is the second visual survey we've done on this one. We did the initial one 3 years ago. Deck's in pretty good shape. Most of the updates coming from this one are pretty much the same challenges, just 3 years past. We're meeting with him early June to talk through what the city wants to do with his recommendations, but the specs are there, the drawings are there. So if the funding is there, then we'll pursue most likely all of the engineers' recommended repairs, get it in purchasing's queue and go from there. There aren't major issues here, which is a big positive. The deck's 18 years old now. I'd say it's everything you're facing with an 18-year-old deck of that age. It's waterproofing on the rooftop, expansion joints that have failed. So you got water, instead of water going where it needs to go into the drains and into the stormwater system, it's going through those joints into other levels. And that becomes a challenge on those other levels too, that aren't waterproof, so to speak. That plus some minor concrete spalling and some seals that have failed, like it's in pretty good shape. So, and I think when we do get to the bidding and construction phase of this, other than the rooftop, it won't be too impactful. So it's kind of a positive sign.
Are joust joints the same as expansion joints? I don't know that term.
I'm gonna defer to you.
I'm assuming Jeff's referring to expansion joints.
Yeah.
Yeah, expansion joints are those joints in
Yeah,
the middle.
that I
of the-
know what it is. That's the ones that make it rain in the deck.
Yeah, it helps the concrete the structure move in an acceptable fashion as it should be built. Yeah. So basically, those are the rubberized joints that through rain, sleet, snow, and lots of salty air here just grind through that rubber over the years, and they develop holes. So it's basically a giant piece of rubber that has a lot of flexibility to it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
A giant expensive piece of rubber.
That's it. Moving forward, so I wanted to share with you the Q3 fiscal year 23 data. The screen you are looking at right now is off-street parking revenues. I've got a 5-year data plot for you to see. But the pink is the decks and the blue is the lots. So you can see fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 23. Let's look at that. The lots went from 362,147 to 544,782. And then the decks went to 1,546,262 to 1,941,091. Let me get through the on-street and the total revenue, and we can talk about any of your thoughts. The on-street revenue, this is I don't know if people at home can see that clearly, but the green is the citation revenue and the blue is the meter revenue. And again, this is just Q3, January to March. If we look at a comparison of 22 to 23, let's look at the green bar first. Citation revenue went from 296,547,000 to 449,684. And then the meter revenue went to 1,018,818 to 1,225,874. Significant jumps, and we can talk about it on the other side here. The total revenue for fiscal year 23 so far, that's cumulative. This number you're looking at is from Q1 until now. The number for 23, as you can see, is 4,175,941. Fiscal year 22 is 3,215,774. And the trend is always upwards, except for that 21 year, which is the pandemic year. Just my first thoughts are, I think that some of the takeaways are, we did have fee increases that came down the pike. I also want to anecdotally share that I came down last week. I went to Seabird, and downtown Wilmington is jumping after 4 p.m. I don't know if anybody's been down here for it, but it's alive and vibrant. So I wanted to share that, and then I will open up the floor for Discussion.
I have two quick questions. I noticed citations was a significant increase. There was also an increase in meter revenue. I think we're one slide back. But it looked like citations, and quick math in my head was a little bit higher of an increase. Is there a reason for that? Is it more staff? Is it more issues? Is it something else?
Flip back to that citation slide, Jeff, real quick. Other direction, or,
It's the green bars. blue
yeah,
and
green and blue. Go down, go down. Go down. Yeah.
Sorry.
Twofold, John. The
One more,
big increase.
There you go.
The year over year increase, actually, this is a pretty significant increase. Part of it's staffing. I think if you heard Noah and Park Wilmington report out on the last two meetings, with some of the citation volumes going up. They've been fully staffed pretty well over the last 9 months. So I think that has a lot to do with it. There's been a higher emphasis on the residential enforcement that's playing into it. Those, although that's not a huge percentage, but those citations are $40 a piece. So on the revenue side, that plays into it. The big jump versus 21 and 22 is obviously COVID, like the citations
Yeah.
extremely dropped in
22, 23
21.
is what I was looking at. 'Cause I'm kinda-
22 was a very slow comeback on the citation side, which was an interesting one to watch last year. And I didn't really have any answers last year as to the why, because we were staffed well last year. But a combination of staff and just activity downtown as well. I think that's and honestly, that 449 is at Q3 right now is higher than what we had budgeted. So it's a much higher number than what we had anticipated.
You think 22 had lower citation revenue because of the road work?
Yeah, could be the case, McKay. Yeah, a lot of streets are shut down, so that's less. It's at least 2 blocks that we were working with that may have been closed. 22, also portions of Water Street, Chestnut, Grace were closed around the River Place development. There were streets closed on the north end with the Kettler stuff, so. And then on the meter revenue side, I'd say a lot of that, Jeff didn't report out on the hours purchase, but the hours purchase is slightly down. Revenues are up, I think, strictly due to activity and the rates going from $1.50 to $2 per hour, but the meter purchase hours are actually down this year. But I think what we're seeing with the meter purchase hours down is our off-street numbers are through the roof. Our off-street numbers are nearly 50% plus increase. And I think folks are now shifting from on-street and using the off streets for those longer, cheaper fees. And it's kind of what we want, because the more that happens, the more prime, quick on-street space opens up. It's kind of parking 101 there. And we haven't had any challenges with capacity with any of those parkers moving to the off-street lots at all. So, I mean, there's still plenty of open spaces for folks to make that move.
Very good.
It's
And
what we've wanted for years.
And we've seen slow, subtle, every time we bump up the on-street rates, there's that slow, subtle shift every single time. And it closes as if we don't change the rates again. But every time we change the rates, you see that kind of shift of more folks using the lots and decks versus on-street.
The other part of the question I have is I noticed the significant increases in revenues. I'm assuming that with the increase in revenues that drastic, that your percentage of maintenance from your fees would actually be less and more on the profit side of that. Is that going in reserve, or is there plans for that, or?
Yeah, I
that's just
mean,
not the case?
in looking at next year's, as of right now, the projected recommended budget coming from parking still needs to be passed by council over the next few weeks. But we have a balanced budget. We are projecting out, I think, nearly $1 million increase year over year budgeted revenues. and that extra, so to speak, million that we're generating. 600,000 is going back to the Second Street parking deck for the next phase. There's 100,000 getting allocated to kind of the smart camera idea. There's also 250,000 in parking revenues getting transferred to the general fund for public facilities team downtown to help kind of increase their wages and keep them competitive with the kind of overall workforce. And some justification around that was everything, you know, they do in terms of the power washing, the trash collection, the graffiti removal, you know, everything they do at the base level that then the MSD team comes in and does above and beyond, helps bring in tourists, helps bring in visitors, and helps drive those parking revenues. So they had approached parking about that. So a piece is going to the general fund, which I feel really, really good about. But yeah, and it's really just, it's maintenance and all funds. Every penny we make, there's a penny to be spent, I think. Great question.
I have a question. So the parking spaces along Riverfront Park that are being taken up by the Porta Johns for Live Nation, when those go online, is there a method to open those back up, or are those going to be closed and they rent out those spaces to?
Are you talking about like the Nut Street extension there?
Mhm.
They're open and publicly available when there's not Live Nation events. So they are open now. You can when Live Nation doesn't capture their geographic boundary or another event at the park, they're open for the public right now.
Yeah, I'm talking about the one that's right in between the Metropolitan and that one open lot behind TPD.
I can barely hear Christine.
I thought there was supposed to be metered parking going on beside the actual park.
There's metered parking between Cowan Street and Harnett on Nut Street. It's like 21 spaces that have been installed a couple of years ago, which is on the east side of the park in Kettler's parking deck there. Right now, there's no metered parking planned on the Kettler Marina side, nor is there any parking planned on that kind of foot of Harnett right now.
Okay.
I think there's about 40 to 60 feet of loading zone space planned in front of the Kettler's property, maybe in that area you're talking about.
Okay.
But beyond what's already at the Nut Street extension, which is the connector between Harnett and Cowan. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a possibility for some metered parking right at the foot of Harnett, kind of at the edge of PPD's property. But we're just waiting for construction to finish and see what we're working with.
Any other questions, concerns about revenues? Any other updates, sir?
That was it, Lynn. That was it.
Okay, we'll move on to organization updates from CFCC. We just graduated a whole lot of people on Friday, which was a very successful. We had 2 ceremonies at the Wilson Center. Very well attended, went very well. We are on break this week, if you haven't noticed, the crickets downtown, and then summer semester starts back on Monday. We have a lot of events planned this summer, so it will still be busy for us, but other than that, we're taking a little bit of a breather. CVB.
We have one large group coming in next week. It's a cybersecurity group. They've got about 600 people and they're using about 5 different hotels. So they will be all over downtown in multiple different spaces.
Wonderful. That's it.
That's it.
DBA. New Hanover County.
Sorry.
And I
No.
saw Lieutenant Olinger on
Yes.
as well in case.
I'm sure Dean has something to share. I was going to share if anyone watched our Board of Commissioner meeting from May 15th, there was a public hearing consideration for approval for Project Grace to come back online with Cape Fear Development, and it was approved. I'm looking at probably tentative start date of October of this year for us to start really coming back online with this. I'm gonna have a little bit more information on what that will mean for our deck improvements, fencing, that kind of thing. Probably end of June, beginning of July. But if you guys have any questions or anything like that, specifics, I can try to get it beforehand.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think even though we've pushed on the city side and the private side has pushed, county has held strong. You guys have kind of held back on monthly parking contracts and looked at your numbers pretty close to where, like, during construction, and everything, you most likely wouldn't push any parkers out during that phase. Like, there's roughly 250, 300 spaces empty regularly over there, right?
Yeah. It's really hard to say what the plan is. The goal from facilities management is to not have any interruption to people parking or anything like that. As far as spaces being used, I'm not sure what their plan would be.
Okay.
And it's kind of going to drive what Ashley and I work out for spaces. I have to think about it more.
Didn't
I
mean to
guess.
put you on the spot there.
Yeah,
I
I'm like,
just-
ooh.
We get that. We've been asked that question a lot on the city side since day one. And gotten varying answers. So I think just the more information we know
Mhm.
leading into actual construction phase, if any parkers are going to lose their space and stuff like that, just so we can try to make plans elsewhere when and if needed. So,
Yeah, the goal is not to have an impact and have it be any different than what it is now. At least, especially in my mind, the goal is to only make it better and easier, more efficient. So
Yeah.
it's, we also have a lot of staff coming online for Port City United and stuff like that, that may be
Sure.
taking spaces and stuff like that. So got it.
And I'd say just so the committee's aware, like, I mean, Jeff and I have been doing some heavier counts recently, peak daytime at both Market and Second Street. You know, there's 100+ spaces open peak at Second Street, which is a much bigger number than previous years. And then Market's 200+ spaces open on any given day. So we've got the capacity as of now if needed. So.
And I think PPD would be online before any construction would happen, right?
If the purchase takes place, yeah.
Yeah. If I was understanding the previous meeting, it would probably kind of
after.
line up near about time.
So if the purchase happens, there's a whole lot of capacity on the north end if that happens.
Be a great opportunity to kind of sync wave with that deck as well.
With the county going through with Project Grace, I thought I heard in the meeting that there was going to be even some possible improvements to the parking deck, restriping, adding some
Yes.
40 something new spaces possibly. Maybe I got the number wrong, but I'm trying to look through my notes. But do you have any more updates on that?
Yeah, so some of the things that were mentioned were restriping, increasing or moving reduction of the number of entrances because of the building, like the lots on the far side, I guess that's the south side. I'm backwards. That's going to be a building connected essentially to that side. So there's going to have to be some airflow changes to the deck because it might be closed in. And there is like code requirements for airflow, things like that, that have to be taken into consideration, as well as entrances, exits, handicap spots. All that has to be taken into consideration with the new developer. And then don't know exactly what this means, but they said floor plates. I didn't know what that But I'm working with Sarah Warmoth, our facilities manager, to I don't know what a floor plate is. So I was not quite sure of that, but there will continue to be access control cameras, things like that. There's been a myriad of improvements, but essentially connecting that deck in the middle, it's going to be the middle of the sandwich. And we'll have to consider airflow and what that will mean for improvements in parking spots.
But with the-
A floor plate, just for whatever it's worth, floor plate's exactly what it sounds like. It's just the size and perimeter of every floor in a building. The airflow changes that you're talking about, if there's not enough exposed sides, so if it can get natural ventilation into a parking deck, then you have to add mechanical equipment, which is usually in the, at least in the seven-figure ballpark, but it's a pretty big undertaking. And there may be shafts and things like that. They'll probably try to just do it on the back side of the building if they can, but without seeing the plans, it's hard to say.
Yeah, that was the plans even for me were, it was more of a list and less of me seeing a blueprint plan. So it's been even hard for me to get a hold.
Good luck.
There's been a lot of changes. There really has a lot of questions, a lot of things with LGC, stuff like that. So it's probably why it's kind of close to chest. I don't know if Dean has anything to share.
Good morning, everyone. Regarding the parking deck with the sheriff's office, let's see, we have 54 focus patrols that were conducted at that location. 5 field FIRs were completed. 3 verbal warnings, 0 citations, 0 arrests, and we distributed 1 street sheet to displacement individuals and street transients for community resources. Other than that, it's been pretty quiet.
Thank you, sir. Is that it from New Hanover? All right, moving on, Roe.
Row has a new focus recently. As you all may be aware, the Fifth Avenue Methodist Church is closed. And the Methodist Conference has been had an open meeting to air ideas for the future use of the church. And Roe has formed a committee to try to make recommendations. And the church is being very open and transparent. And we think there's opportunities for very helpful uses. There's also strong support against certain services like homeless housing and some things like that. So we hope it'll be a good resource for the community.
Thank you, Peter. Again, thank you for your service and welcome aboard, sir. WDI.
Well, first, we're very excited about Project Grace moving forward. And we hope to see a great outcome as the process goes along. I have had our first development meeting with our development team at Bluetone Media to begin the process of developing our online parking map with the Bring It Downtown funds that we've received for this fiscal year. So the whole process will take about 9 to 10 weeks, they said, but I'm going to give it about maybe 12 weeks before that online map comes, just to give them some wiggle room there. And then we hope to begin inputting all the information that needs to go into it as far as the restaurants, bars, and getting public to participate in inputting that information, probably late summer, early fall, and then go ahead and have it live in time for Christmas for folks to be able to utilize it. We have a little bit of funding set aside from Bring It Downtown in order to advertise and make sure people are aware that this new tool is available. And hopefully it'll be a good resource for folks in the community and for our visitors. Any questions about that? The Bijou Park mural is underway. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to visit Bijou Park lately, but there's paint on the wall. You can start seeing some flowers and some beautiful artwork that's going to be covering the entire stucco wall on the north, I believe, north facing wall of that park. So Jonathan Arango is the lead on that project, and we're excited that it's coming together. Another thing that's interesting to note, the mayor of Evanston, Illinois had reached out.
Christina?
Yes.
Can you please speak up
he'll-
or move the
yes.
mic closer? Thank you.
The mayor of Evanston, Illinois reached out to WDI in order to talk to us about what we're doing here in Wilmington with our MSD and our street outreach program. We had a good conversation, and just really excited that our program is getting recognized across the nation for what we're doing as far as ambassador services and street outreach. That's the highlights right now.
Thank you. All right, I know Lieutenant Nichols is not here today for WPD, but I think Chance, you have an update?
Yeah, Len, we got a written update from Lieutenant Nichols. Stats for the month in the downtown district as follows: 13 alcohol-related charges, 4 DWIs, 6 narcotics arrests, 3 bar inspections. And a note, crowds on the weekends are starting to pick back up, as we should anticipate with mid to late May, but no issues at all on that pickup from Lieutenant. And the downtown task force will be adding 3 full-time officers in the coming weeks. School resource officers will also be helping during the summer months once school is released to help supplement the manpower. And mounted officers have switched to their summer hours, and those new summer hours are 2 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. daily.
Thank you. And just a note to make everybody aware, some of our unsheltered population from underneath the bridge, the 3rd Street Bridge, has now moved into the wooded area between CFCC's Valley and Dead Crow Comedy. It's a very steep hill there's an apartment complex on 2nd Street that backs up to Dead Crow on 3rd, and there's wooded area. It's very steep, it's very wooded. So it's not possible, and it's not a very big space, so it's not possible for tents and that sort of thing to be erected. But we do have some unsheltered living in that particular area. Any updates? Anybody else? Any comments, questions, concerns?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, I have one for the committee to think about and consider and potentially make a motion. So as everybody knows, especially the volunteers on this board, we all give a lot of our time to the city. I know several of you are on a bunch of boards. You know, I know I personally serve on 3 downtown. And there's a lot of members of our community of the city that give a ton of time volunteer wise. I know the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment and the Clean Energy Advisory Committee that I'm looking at, the Tree Committee, there's a lot of them. And while there are a ton of city committees, some of them come downtown, some of them don't. But for those volunteers that are, for years of their lives giving a lot of their time, obviously there's no pay. Well, let's frame this now. You have city employees that have places at the park. You have the council has their spots. My thought is this is like, when I come downtown, it's to serve on these committees and spend several hours down here. I then have to walk over, I get my little stickers so that I can scan or whatever it may be. I hear that there's trouble from the nominations committee, the appointment committee, even getting members to volunteer their time because it is such a commitment. I mean, Lynn, how long you been on this committee? You've been on this thing for years, right? I've been on this thing for almost 5 now. So how do I think as a DPAC, we might have an opportunity to maybe, there's no compensation for being on a board. There's nothing other than wanting to serve our community in some way and give something back. Talk to me about how we can lessen the impact for those members of the community that volunteer for a board to make their parking easier. They get to register 1 car, Jeff, and they get to park on the street. I mean, what is that going to really cost us? If you look across all these all these committees, from the Loan Review Board to the Historic Preservation Committee, that seriously give a ton of their time. I know it sounds maybe I'm being nitpicky, but I come down for 4 hours, and then I got to walk across the street, get a sticker. Like, how great would it be? What it would really cost that if I could put a sticker on our car that I could park on the street, I could pull up, go in, take care of my meeting. When I get a call and I got to come down for a board or got to meet something, we can't pay these volunteers. So how do we say thank you and save them some time from, I was talking to one of the board members last month. He pulled into the lot and like tried to find a spot up at the top. And I know I'm being semantic, like parking in the garage, no big deal. But I think as a DPAC, do we have an opportunity to say thank you to those people that are giving a lot of time to all these boards and committees?
I think it's a good idea. That's something I brought up in the past, and it's actually, there are a lot of us like me that actually have a parking deck for one specific deck, that it would be even less of a hassle just turning on other deck accesses to the same card.
Let's look at it. I think it's a great idea.
What is there to look at?
What I would say is street parking, I would think I would be adamantly against street parking. If we were to offer something like this to city volunteer council appointed boards, I would say we'd have to look at off street. But what I would also say is let's see what happens with the PPD acquisition, because I think with the PPD acquisition, it does go through most, if not all, of your boards at some point would shift into that building, would be my thought. And you would have a 1,000-space parking deck right across the street that could probably service all of those needs. So
How many volunteers, Scott, do we have in the city of Wilmington that would?
I'd have to ask Miss Spicer Sudbury. Penny.
Because, I mean, where do you limit that? I mean, Azalea Festival alone has, and that they are a city, I don't know if they are into what you are considering a sponsored
I would say
committee.
a council appointed position. I'd say most boards or committees have 4 to 6 members. Not all of them meet downtown.
I think that would be a tremendous burden for parking to have to try to manage.
Can you explain that?
Because, I mean, I don't know what number you're talking about. Are we talking about 100 people? Are we talking about 500? Are we talking
No, there's
about
not 500. It would be less than 100.
with all the
Can I-
council appointed?
Can I chime in on this?
Absolutely.
I worked over at Park Wilmington for a short period before taking on the county deck. Some of the struggles that the parking would face would be if from the decal itself is, do they have to create it? Will it be supplied to them? Creating and tracking these decals and then having the staff be aware of them, having them properly affixed to vehicles, making sure they're always checking for it, and then worrying about abuse of the decal, which I'm not saying it's inherently going to happen, but even accidentally, are there going to be specific times, specific locations these decals can be utilized in servicing these boards? And that's just off the top of my head.
Can you explain what abuse of a decal would look like?
I think quickly,
Say,
abuse of
if
decal
they're
for-
coming down-
could be someone parking on Front Street on a Saturday night at 9 p.m.
Going to a Live Oak show,
going to a Live Oak show, using their, say we give them a badge,
our committee.
using it
badge.
for a Live Oak show.
Rather
There's
than
a
park-
lot to think through. I think we need to probably weigh a positive, negative revenue outcome. I like the idea from the off-street validation side. I don't think it works on street.
If it's just as simple as paying for their parking during these committee meetings, why not offer parking vouchers at every meeting?
There can be, it's somewhat more of a logistics issue. And I'm talking about like the word abuse, that they can park for free. Like that's not abuse. If they're serving their city, they're not a paid There's strictly a volunteer. They give their time to the city and in serving the
And-
city.
But
And that's
I
not-
disagree. Go ahead.
That's not what I mean by abuse. If they're servicing doing the council needs and doing their volunteer work, that is perfectly fine. That's the point of those decals. But what if someone, even if hypothetically, someone has a kid, they realize that their parent is going downtown for work and they can borrow the car, they go downtown, they can park on the street, and to go to a concert, to go to a bar, to go shopping. And that's not what that decal is for. And again, this is just one
but who
hypothetical.
says
This is
that
not
that
all
decal
of the.
couldn't, who says that decal couldn't be for that purpose? Who, they have a vehicle that,
But
they're not
that's not what
competent.
you want these decals to do.
no,
Is it?
I'm saying that is, yes, that is.
Oh.
This would be this one benefit that if you serve your community and you volunteer and you routinely have to come down for community business, that you have one decal and
So-
that you're able to park.
So you're not just talking use during the
I'm-
actual committee meeting, you're talking a
I'm,
24/7.
because we don't want to have the burden on the city. We've got to figure out a way to make it
I get
easy.
what
And
you're
I'm
saying.
just saying, this is the one benefit. If you volunteer your time and you sit on the planning commission and you're down here all the time, why can't you have a decal that you can park downtown? Every city employee has a place that they can park. Every council member has a place they can park.
I
And you have
I
a
would
place
just
you can
say,
park.
I pay
I
for
I
my,
get what you're saying. And as a matter of fact, in Carolina Beach, all you do is register your license plate and they come by, and if your license plate's registered, it's there. So there wouldn't be a physical decal, or we could get
Yeah,
around the
that's great.
technical side of it.
That's
I
great.
would encourage, if this goes any further, to one, research the legality of, what's basically an in-kind payment. And as a perk, and then two, to think about it from a PR standpoint. Just the fact that everybody that volunteers, which is great, and I agree
Sounds-
that it
it
would be good to
sounds
do
like
something
a-
for everybody. It'd be a PR nightmare. as
sounds
far
like
as I
you
can
brought up
see.
a topic that has lots of potential for discussion and probably needs to be an agenda item for another meeting. Because it sounds like everybody has a lot of opinions on this particular topic. So maybe Scott,
Okay.
for next meeting, if you want to do some research and indicate like how many volunteers, what your scope of the actual proposal would be, and then come back and we can get it as an agenda item so we can actually discuss it further.
Understood.
Anything else at this time? All right, guys, as always, thank you so much for your time and look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you, guys.
Goodbye, everyone.